So he has skyrocketed into social media fame. And the reason is because his ideological positions and the way he expresses himself is so connected to the id of the modern day Democratic Party. And I just want to show you a few of them because it doesn't just shed light on Dan Goldman, it sheds light on the Democratic Party itself. All of these videos were promoted by the supreme partisan videographer Aaron Rupert, who used to work for Vox and now is on his own. And they really embody not just Dan Goldman's ethos, but the ethos of the Democratic Party. He couldn't pick a more perfect avatar of Democratic Party politics than a billionaire heir who hates working class people and who reveres the U.S. security state. That's pretty much the fullness of his agenda. So, as you probably recall, we reported it several times when it happened and after. Matt Taibbi, along with Michael Schellenberger, appeared before the House Judiciary Committee to be questioned by members of that committee about the Twitter files reporting, which showed that the U.S. security state, the FBI, the CIA, Homeland Security had been exercising extraordinary amounts of influence over Twitter's decisions about what views and what people can and cannot be heard online. In other words, the U.S. security state is directly involved in censoring our domestic political discourse. And every Democrat on that committee, literally every Democrat, not only defended and heralded the importance and virtue of them doing so, but attacked Taibbi personally for the crime of revealing that which they wanted to be kept secret because they were in support of it. And one of the people who was most scornful against the journalist, remember when insulting journalists used to be a grave press freedom crisis back in 2017, 2018, 2019? Now, Democrats are giddy with ecstasy and arousal when they watch Dan Goldman do it. Let's watch what he did to Matt Taibbi about the Twitter files.
About Twitter. And even with Twitter, you cannot find actual evidence of any direct government censorship of any lawful speech. And when I say lawful, I mean non-criminal speech, because plenty of speech is non-criminal.
I'll give you one. The gentleman's time to expire. I'd ask unanimous consent to enter into the record the following email from Clark Humphrey, Executive Office of the Presidency, White House Office, January 23rd, 2021. That's the Biden administration, 4:39 a.m. Hey, folks. This goes to Twitter. Hey, folks, wanted to use the term they used the term Mr. Goldman just used. Wanted to flag the below tweet, and I'm wondering if we can get moving on the process for having it removed ASAP.
Boom.
That is.
Could you read the below tweet?
And then if we can keep an eye out for tweets that fall in this same genre, that would be great. This is a tweet on the very issue that Thomas
can you just
brought.
So they go on to argue about what this tweet is, whether or not it should have been censored. So Dan Goldman went from saying there's never an instance in which the Biden administration or the U.S. security state tried to influence Twitter to remove lawful speech. He then went on to acknowledge, because Jim Jordan forced him to, that in fact that does happen, and then went on to justify it. The examples Jim Jordan first chose were ones where Hunter Biden's laptop was used to reveal things about Hunter Biden's personal life, and then others were more generalized about all kinds of censorship that Twitter did at the behest of the FBI, which was the heart and soul of the Twitter files, and Democrats cheered it and explicitly praised it. Now, at a recent immigration hearing, a journalist whom I know, whose work I followed for quite a while now, Julia Rosas, who comes from a humble working class family and who has really done just standard, classic, on-the-ground, courageous reporting at protests that have been dangerous and specifically reporting on the border, appeared before the committee on which Dan Goldman sits to testify. And Dan Goldman spoke about him like he was dirt on the ground, someone whose credentials were so pitiful that he could barely even utter it in his mouth. It really reveals so much about his character, but about the Democratic Party's class-based view of the world. Listen to what he did and how he treated this journalist.
Get us, gaslight us up here as if Antifa, which Mr. Rosas, apparently the expert now in organized terrorist activity, has overruled the FBI director who says, there's a headline, says Antifa is an ideology, not an organization. No, no, no. Let's not listen to the FBI director. Let's listen to, sorry, what's your title? Senior writer at Town Hall, who is going to tell us that the FBI director is wrong. And I'd like to introduce, there's no question.
No suggesting that the FBI director is wrong. What kind of person would do that? Would dispute a claim from the FBI? This is disgusting. And especially when it comes from some writer at what's it called? Town Hall? Didn't even go to Sidwell Friends, never stepped foot on Yale's campus, didn't go to Stanford Law, never worked in the federal prosecutor's office, didn't come from a billionaire family, just some loser whose name he can barely remember and whose credential it makes him sick to even reference. And the biggest crime of all was the fact that he would dare, based on his years of reporting on Antifa protest on the ground, to characterize it differently than the way the FBI director does. No criticizing the FBI. Now, if you think that is in any way an overstatement, listen to what Dan Goldman said yesterday, in which he ranted and raved against the audacity of the Republican Party in arguing that the FBI is what it has always been and what the Democratic Party and the liberal left sector of it has always maintained it was until about 6 years ago, which is a fundamentally corrupt organization. Now Dan Goldman believes that saying that about the FBI is a reflection of bad moral character. Listen to this rousing defense of the FBI that went viral all over Twitter as liberals cheered.
So why are my colleagues trying to undermine the FBI? Why are they asking to defund the FBI?
Oh, no undermining the FBI. How can anyone want to undermine the FBI? Every year, literally, since I've been writing about politics, we've gotten reports from the Inspector General's Office of the FBI, the Inspector General's Office of the Justice Department, independent investigations like the Horowitz report, like the one John Durham just submitted, a 306-page report detailing at great length the severe abuses that the FBI commits of their power for political ends. They still work in what is called the J. Edgar Hoover building. That is the name of their headquarters. J. Edgar Hoover, who they couldn't dislodge from the FBI for 60 years because he famously kept dossiers on every major political figure in Washington, and everyone was petrified of him. The FBI under Hoover, which encouraged Martin Luther King to commit suicide upon threat of revealing the evidence the FBI illegally obtained through surveillance of Martin Luther King's adulterous relationships. That's the FBI that Dan Goldman is here to say nobody should dare ever undermine.
It is not because the FBI is not doing its job. It's because the FBI is doing its job. And the problem they have is that the FBI is doing its job in investigating their dear leader, Donald Trump. And if you can undermine the investigator, if you can undermine independent journalists doing investigative reporting, then you can undermine our entire system of democracy. That is the authoritarian playbook 101. You attack the democratic institutions, you attack the independent, objective individuals who provide checks and balance in a democracy, and then, rather than follow the law and the rules, you can violate the law and the rules because there's no one with any credibility who can hold you in check. So do you want to know the reason why the FBI is going down in its credibility? It's because it's being attacked by people on the other side of the aisle, and that has to stop.
Did you know that the FBI, you may have thought the FBI, if you've listened to any Democratic Party senator over the last 60 years, like Frank Church, who led the investigation into the U.S. security state in the 1970s and uncovered systemic abuses that shocked America, you may have thought the FBI was actually a menace to democratic values. That's what John Durham just concluded they launched an investigation in the middle of the 2016 election with no evidentiary basis of any kind into Trump's fictitious collusion with the Russians in order to manipulate the outcome of the 2016 election. They've repeatedly got caught abusing their spying powers for all kinds of improper ends. An FBI lawyer pled guilty in a federal court to lying to the FISA court to get search warrants to spy on Carter Page when he was just out of representing or working with the Trump campaign. And yet here's Dan Goldman to tell you the FBI is critical for safeguarding our democratic values. And if we criticize them, if we erode their credibility, that is how our democracy is threatened. Not from them abusing all their powers and spying on Americans for improper ends, but by people having the audacity to criticize the FBI because of their abuse of political power. If you look at polling, and we've shown this many times, and I'm about to bring Jeffrey Sachs on, I'm excited to do that, so we're going to talk to him about all of these things, but I just want to show you this as the last graph here. Here's a Pew survey from March of 2023. So often people say to me, or Matt Taibbi or others, what happened to you guys? We used to love you. You've really changed. This shows what has actually changed. Overwhelming majorities of Democratic voters, overwhelming majorities, now view the FBI, the CIA, and the Department of Homeland Security favorably, while majorities of Republicans or pluralities view them skeptically and critically. And so when Dan Goldman gives this rousing homage to the greatness and integrity and importance of the FBI, he is speaking on behalf of Democratic Party voters, and that is why it resonates. That has become the core ideology of the Democratic Party, that the U.S. security state is here to protect our democracy, to protect the United States through its great integrity and honor and commitment to democracy, and that anyone who criticizes it is unpatriotic, probably a Russian agent, or somebody who is a criminal. Why else would you criticize the FBI unless it was because you wanted to hide your own crimes? And right at the same time, as this Pew poll in August of 2021 shows, overwhelming majorities of Democrats favor the internet being censored not only by tech companies, by big tech, but also by the state. They want the U.S. government to take steps to restrict information on the grounds that the U.S. government sees that it's false, even if it limits freedom of information. That's 65% of Democrats that want that. It has skyrocketed since 2018, and 76% of Democrats who want big tech to do it. They want to unify state and corporate power to censor the internet, and the U.S. security state is the North Star of Democratic Party politics, which is why they're in line with almost, in an alliance with almost every major neocon that now correctly perceives that the Democratic Party is their best vehicle for advancing the neoconservative agenda. In the last week, Dan Goldman has made almost $10 million in stock trades after promising to put his assets in a blind trust and saying that he should never, that no member of Congress should ever trade stocks. This is who has become the rising star, the most popular new member of Congress among the online liberal left and the Democratic Party. And it's hard to imagine a better avatar, a better, clearer representative for what this party has become. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update. Catch our full shows for free, live weekdays at 7 p.m. Eastern on Rumble, and join our locals community at greenwald.locals.com for all of my written journalism, exclusive after-show Q&As, and more.